podcast where faith meets exploration.
What is going on, Tikhon Johnson?
Well, I don't know, a lot's changed, I think, since the last time we were on here. Sounds like um I think we were both in very different areas of belief, and it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, the also quite very different areas for me physically,
Yeah.
geographically speaking. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. And
Yeah, because you were stationed in Japan, so yeah, you've been traveling the world.
and it has been crazy. I know on my last podcast with Eduardo, I kind of went into it, but last year was crazy. I had orders to move. I was fighting the surgery issues. I had three surgeries. I was in the ICU last year. Lots of lots of stuff, and I got over it. I got here. I had the third surgery when I got to South Dakota, and then I had a very whole process. The doc here decided since my foot kept reinfecting, the best way to let it heal is to leave it open, and we had a wound packet. So, if you've ever imagined what it would look like to have a nail through someone's foot and that hole that's left, I don't need to visualize that anymore. I have experienced it.
Is that
Uh,
like so you took a nail through the foot and it got infected, or
no, you okay if I send you some pics?
I I I pulled my dad's severed thumb out of a skill saw. I can handle anything.
Okay. I think you'll get what I'm saying. You know, it's kind of hard. I don't want to be inappropriate, but
Yeah, you're good.
there's a comparison I was callously and wrongly making, but it's kind of wild. But yeah, that kind of healed, and when I got to South Dakota, I was having breathing issues. You know, I thought it was because I was at sea level for so long and yada yada yada. And I just I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. And then I was like, priority, I got to get this foot healed. So I was working on that. And then, I kind of figured, my body should kind of recalibrate and climatize to the altitude. It's not as high as where I used to live in Colorado. I lived in Utah before, but something just wasn't right. So I went and got to the doctor, and we there we go, found it. It's hard to scroll. I have so many pictures of my cats. I gotta find
Yeah.
stuff. But message needs to be enabled through. Okay, I'm gonna send it to you through Messenger because that's just gonna be easier. But I was still not breathing right, and so I went. I basically started pressing like, "Hey, like I'm getting gassed real easy. I'm shortness of breath. My wife has asthma, and she's fine. I'm the one that's wheezing in my sleep. I can't breathe." Like even right now, I had to hit the inhaler because I know I'd be talking for a while, and finally started getting a bunch of testing done, and dual diagnosis of respiratory adverse disease, triggered through allergy issues because my blood work came back. If it's green, I'm allergic to it, and
Mhm.
and to top it off, I went and had a specialized test where they give you this chemical, you breathe it in, breathe it out, and they basically see how asthmatic you are. And the asthma diagnosis came back. And then I'm supposed to go see the ENT and allergy specialists. And I'm fighting with TRICARE and them and getting it scheduled. So, um, yeah, it's been it's been a wonderful, wonderful time. There we go.
Like any kind of history with any sort of similar health issues, or just out of the blue, just getting,
It's just
oh
I have
wow.
yeah.
And they had to just leave that open to let the infection heal.
Yeah, and it basically healed bottom up, and doing it that way it just takes a long time. It'll take about 2 years for it to fully heal, and then the skin itself just takes forever. Right now, it's kind of like doing a lizard thing where the top layer skin sheds off, gets crispy, so it's like a
Mm.
daily lotion routine. So physical therapy's done, got through that, and uh, then I'm fighting this asthma thing. So. And they put me on some pretty hard medications. prednisone for 5 days, 30 days of another medicine, and daily uh, inhalers and corticoids. And last night I was having a histamine reaction, so I basically turned into a lobster. Uh, and was about to go to the ER, and then my skin just flushed out. So it's just, it's just, it's been wild. And so uh, it's just, it's trying on the faith, and I guess that's what helped me stay on the path that I'm doing. And it, uh, my experiences throughout this whole process and arduous journey, if you will, uh, has kind of like reinforced my new paradigm through Orthodox Christianity. So,
Yeah, it I kind of wonder sometimes. I'm like, okay, what kind of drastic, crazy, life-changing, like turn my life upside down things gonna happen? Because it's like the way I think of it is you go down this kind of path, all of a sudden the enemy is like, oh, I don't want you on this path, and he's going to do everything in his power to kind of, like deter you and or try to anyway. And I hear stories all the time about like even people. Like this is kind of like a whole like a different level in a way, but people just having paranormal experiences even, stuff they suddenly they're suddenly encountering things. Like I know I've started having weirder dreams and like with me it's been mostly little stuff that's just kind of like would hit me, but the journey into the church is it's definitely not a simple one, and I kind of you know I didn't really come here to take Christianity on easy mode. But anyway, but there's um yeah, there's a lot of it's a it's a taking this kind of journey, I guess this is a point that I'm trying to get to. It's the enemy's gonna be after you on a journey like this and in one in some way, shape, or form. And I mean this all these health issues, it could be related to that.
uh, that's something I've thought about. Like stuff, I think stuff just happens because it happens. There's stuff going on that we don't know. Just stuff happens. Um, but just one thing after another, it's just it's been humbling.
Yeah.
And uh I've been able to reflect on a lot of the stuff that I've experienced in my past background and kind of fighting with that. Uh, I always joke I was Mormon, but not a very good one, not bad enough to be called a jack one. And at the
Yeah.
same time, I was constantly questioning stuff, and and then there were some things that I found they weren't defensible, and so in order to be safe, I just kind of ignored it. I read a lot of stuff and a lot of books, and it just I don't know, I just felt like something was missing from my life. Like there's something that I don't have. And coming across orthodoxy through all the various ways that I did, all the stuff that my previous background said is bad is what has kept me there. I feel like I have prayed no more in my life now than I ever have. It's consistent. I yearn to pray so much so that throughout the day I think about, oh, I probably shouldn't do that because I'm gonna have to pray later. And it's kind of, um, it's almost like making sure you're clean consistently. Like it's like if you're about to eat some hamburgers, you want to make sure your hands are clean. And not to say that prayers are hamburgers, but the metaphor works. But and then on top of that, the band Holy Name, that song, what is it? Take me to come to me. What is it?
Meet me so is it meet me
Meet me
somewhere
somewhere
quiet?
quiet.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to there I did actually there was um Jake Liebarger is his name. He's gosh. If he winds up watching this, I feel like I'll have to ask him to forgive me if I get any of these details wrong, but he's Orthodox and he knows he's like there's like a choir group, I think, like the Rev Gang that's affiliated with Holy Name, and he's part of them. And he does like a podcast where he has um people that are Orthodox or Orthodox catechumens involved in and like punk like come on, and he does, and that's gosh, I'm drawing a total blank right now. I'm trying to remember the name of the podcast. Now I feel terrible. Because it's one of those, I'm having a brain fart, but um he yeah, I dig them quite a good bit. Their last I've I don't know what kind of new stuff they're working on right now, but I know their last single, Stained Glass, I liked it a lot. And even though I Uh, in hindsight, I feel like I never really belonged to a denomination prior to Orthodoxy. I attended a Baptist church for about 6 months because I was invited, but I never considered myself a Baptist. I never agreed with a lot of their theology and practice. I liked the people there while I was there, but it was mostly just a stepping stone to get me used to get me out of being a complete hermit. But anyway, I'm rabbit trailing, but yeah, their last song, Stained Glass, it's like lyrically, it just talks about it's on the subject of coming from a Protestant background and then finding fullness in Orthodoxy after, I guess you could say, being let down for a long time. And I mean, to me, it's pretty relatable, even though like I said, I never really belonged to any denomination, but I sort of was in I grew up in the Bible Belt, and I still live in the Bible Belt, and in a way it's like I went from being an atheist living in the Bible Belt, and now I'm uh Orthodox. There's some people, and I'd say this is pretty accurate. Some people call us Orthodox Catholic. So, Catholic is probably just as ugly, if not an even uglier word than atheist here in the South. But yeah, Holy Name's great, and oh man, I sidetracked so much, but yeah, that their latest single's really solid, and I'm looking forward to what else they do in the future.
Yeah, so Tommy Green, I found this quote while you're talking. He says, "Some of the answers I haven't been able to, some of the answers I have been given by the modern charismatic Christian culture weren't adequate. There were gaps that I couldn't seem to fill with the face of death. I knew the faith that brought me through Sleeping Giant. I didn't know he was with Sleeping Giant. I always wondered why he sounded familiar.
Yeah.
And nurture that ministry that was beautiful, but I was losing such faith that I needed to find the eyes of Christ somewhere, and I couldn't seem to get my feet under with the answers that I had. I was really in the danger of walking away quite a lot. And wow, like Holy Name is just that's been a really great band. Um,
Yeah. Uh, yeah, and it's the kind of I saw somebody sort of compare leaving Protestantism and coming to Orthodoxy, and Protestants just I mean, I consider my former self a Protestant because I just view the term Protestant as being any believer in Christ like that is outside of, you know, apostolically connected faiths like the Roman Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox, and I'd say even the Coptics, like any of these um Catholic styles of faith that can actually trace their lineage back to the days of the apostles. And the thing about Protestantism is oh man, I'm a blunt guy, but I'll try to be as respectful as possible for anybody listening. But it's basically just taking the scripture and just rebuilding Christianity off of it. And it's and that's what leaves people so yearning, I think, because it's kind of like just reading the menu without ever getting the food. And the scripture, even the scripture itself tells us that we need the apostolic traditions that have been passed down in correlation with the scripture to really get the fullness of the faith. And when it's, you really go in blind on a lot of things when you just, take the King James Bible and try to just live just off of that, the Christian lifestyle. You'll miss, like, proper interpretation is important. This is this is what this verse means to me stuff doesn't work. I mean, even Satan tried that with Christ in the desert, and it was like, well, it is said that this, so you should do this, and then Christ corrects Satan, and then it's like, you know what I'm talking about when it's
Yeah,
even the devil tried to use this is what the scripture means to me type of thing.
and it's like I was listening to an Orthodox Pints with Aquinas, which I like listening to them, Catholics near and dear, and he was talking. One of the guests was talking about how he was interacting with this Protestant, and he quoted a scripture, and the Protestant said, "Oh, I don't recall seeing that. Let me get back to you." And he did get back, and he threw on his own Protestant spin on it. So it's like I think that's why a big driving force of canonizing scripture was so important, is because you have to say what's real and what's not. You got these people saying like, "Oh, the Gospel of Thomas needs to be in there," and it's like my interpretation. And then Protestantism has basically come to this like whatever it is you believe it to be true, and that's why you get all these churches doing all this silly nonsense. It's just like historically would not stand any ground. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it's the response to the issue of papal infallibility was to make every individual their own infallible pope. That's basically what it turned into. And it's I try to kind of I feel like, an environment like this is a good place to really let it out. I try to be cautious because I've got so much evangelical family members, and some of them are just like, and for the most part, they're very wonderful. Some of them I can actually hold a conversation about this kind of stuff. But um, it's just when you take that apostolic tradition, the Bible really just becomes like any other kind of self-help book, and it's it's like sola scriptura, and like it kind of lowers the status of the scripture in a way because the scriptures it's perfected when it's complemented with the apostolic traditions. And yeah, just I could go on all day. I'd probably just be rambling, but
well, that's all. If you think about it, that's what all podcasts are. So just
yeah.
several people rambling into a mic, hoping somebody listens to it and finds some sort of benefit to it, or no benefit, or maybe it's think about how many people tune in to listen to like that podcast Breaking Points about news, and it's literally like next segment, and then they spend 30 minutes of their opinion on like what's going on with Trump's tariffs in China and blah 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 blah. People find something they want to latch on to, and then that's what they like and listen to, and half the time it's people rambling. And
Yeah.
uh as somebody who's rambling as a hobbyist, it's kind of interesting to think about. So
Yeah, there's yeah, it's when it's funny because when I became a believer, and then because I used to, growing up here, I was very agnostic, and I had my past beliefs. I was just, I still got things to work on, but I was just really ugly with people for a long time. Very, uh, I guess I could almost call myself like an anti-theist as far as what I was back then, because when I was first getting into all the underground metal at the time, and I got into like the very super secular subculture of it, and um just the Bible Belt environment I grew up in, where I mean, you have plenty of nice people, but that you also have the finger pointers and a guy like me that was getting into all this underground heavy metal stuff. It was just like, oh, that's the devil's music or whatever, and then it's like, you know what? Fine, so be it. And I kind of went that route for a while, but yeah, it's funny, and I became. I had a moment, I guess you could say, and I became a believer, but I unfortunately just for years just became exactly what I always argued against. That very judgy type of Christian just kept all of my terrible habits from when I was an atheist and brought them into Christianity with me. It's pretty much what happened. And but yeah, that's gosh, there's a lot of history there. And yeah, this I found though that since I've spe since I've started coming into Orthodox Church, and I mean I was baptized at the end of March, and I became a catechumen last June, and then was a catechumen for several months, and then um, like when I hear your story, I feel like I got in way too quick, but like, it's but it's I'm I have no intentions to ever go anywhere else. I've been fascinated with Orthodoxy for about 5 years, and I feel like it's been a long time coming. But um, I found that something that changed though is that I started sort of sympathizing for a lot of non-believers that live in this part of the world again, because I started looking at my past as being in that crowd, and then um, how I was just very rude and dismissive and judgmental of that very type of person I used to be for several years, and then coming into the Orthodox Church and just finding my idea of Christianity basically completely reinvented. I started sympathizing for people like that, and even these people that, pursue like neo-paganism and things like that, because it's like you're getting this just weird, crazy idea of what Christianity is from all the locals. Every single church disagrees with the other. There's They claim we're a united body of Christ, but there's 45,000 denominations of Christianity out there. Like you start, I I've realized like that all that craziness, I can't blame people for going that route with their beliefs because I mean I saw it too, and I couldn't get behind it growing up. It was just clicky and silly to me. But then you discover the faith of the apostles, and you're like, whoa, this is completely different. This is timeless. It's otherworldly. It doesn't break to trends or to progressive ideologies or to whatever political movement you're expected to follow, et cetera, et cetera. And there's just fullness to it. You have it no longer feels like an analogy my priest used, like you're knocking on the ceiling to talk to God. It's the kingdom of heaven's all around us.
That's a strong quote. Yeah, I it's interesting because in my experience I've had the opportunity to basically be in two different parishes, and um I may be able to visit a couple more. Uh but what I think what the beautiful part is, especially coming from an LDS background, for those that watched the last episode, pardon, but w- for LDS, you can get in the door in less than 2 weeks. That's such an insane thing to think. Now, I don't want to make it a bashing thing, but it's like in my experience, having been a LDS missionary and going around and Bible knocking in the Bible Belt and going around tracting and knocking on doors and getting rejected and getting conversations with every sort of flavor and color Protestant you could think of. Um, you got people that just show up to church and they confess and it's done, and then they have no idea about any of the Protestant theology. It's just whatever the preacher says, that's what is Christianity to them. And they have no idea if their preacher's is schismatic within Protestantism. And then flip it to the other side, the LDS, I think the fastest that somebody I ended up teaching and getting them to baptize into LDS church, I think about 3.5 weeks. And I look back on that and I kind of feel like it just felt so disingenuous. And then stuff happens. People are people, regardless, whatever church you're in, there's drama. Something comes up, somebody gets offended. And so they stop going to church. And the LDS over every missionary, it's basically they divide land and geographically assign based off of the district boundaries of the church. And certain districts are here, and you get a district, mission district or a mission. And in that mission, there's hundreds or churches, and you got 200 plus missionaries maybe, and there's so much going on. And occasionally you would do these conferences, and the mission president would come out, and he kept having people ask him about, hey, so and so, keep we taught them, and then they end up leaving the church. And he said, regardless what denomination you go to, people think that Christianity is this museum where you go and visit to see how they did things. And then when stuff happens, they get upset and they leave. But we need to view Christianity as a laboratory that Christ is continually working with us, because otherwise we deny continuous revelation. I don't know how much that stands with an Orthodox theology, and I've yet to ask my priest that during Ask Abuna or in my little catechism classes. But it just doesn't feel uh, right, especially with a lot of this stuff in the LDS church history. Then they come across things that they weren't introduced with the missionary preach my gospel lessons, and then they felt like they were lied to. And so the biggest thing I admire about um, Orthodox is there's time to it. There's not really a rush. And I know some priests are different. And in your case, uh, it's hard to say exactly why the priest felt you were ready, but he did. And I think that's what matters, because it's not this like you hit these checkpoint. It's not like a checklist, like in an American society, we want checklists. Like, okay, I did this. I got a house. I got a car. I got a dog. I got a job. I go on vacation. I'm good. I'm a well-rounded individual. Um, but then you go, and then they go to an Orthodox church, and they're like, I love this. I want to be a member. Where do I sign up? And then they get told, come back next week. And then they get told, come back next week. And so
Hmm.
I really appreciate that, because it's like it makes it more genuine. I saw a comment on the Orthodox subreddit. Oh, excuse me. It, where it's where it's you basically, it's for people when they keep showing up to, Wednesday Vespers and Great Saturday and Pashka, and they make these meetings. And it, because it's not just like come, what did I hear the other day? They were talking uh on the on another podcast, OCE, uh or is it OCE? It's Christmas and Easter only, where they're Christians for those 2 days of the year, and then they just
Oh,
live their lives the way that they live them, or it's like those cliche type, oh, I just go to mass once a week, or oh, I go to mass when it's a chrismation, or I'm becoming a godfather to somebody. And it's like, but where are you?
yeah, it's a constant, uh, it's a constant lifestyle, and it's not easy. It's when you work a stressful job, it's that if I feel like most weeks there's 8 hours of Monday through Friday where I'm where I feel like I wasn't a Christian, like not in my beliefs, but just like uh, the it's I've definitely, I agree with you on I mean I can relate on prayer becoming a more frequent thing. It's it definitely, actually having a rule to your prayer, whereas in Protestant world, it's kind of just like, say whatever you want. Uh, and then, but yeah, like when you have a prayer rule, it helps. It helps you make it a more frequent thing. And there's time, there's times, lately at work, I tend to get a little bit better. Speaking on the subject of prayer, like I found like intercessory prayers growing on me, which is like a horrendous idea around here. It's like you go to only God when you pray, which makes me want to ask people, and why do you ask anybody else to pray for you? If God needs no mediator. But there I found that there's times like I'll be burning up on the job, and there's certain saints like Saint Simeon the Stylite who stood on a pillar for decades exposed to the elements and just stood up on top of this little tower, like this little pillar, and practiced asceticism, totally exposed to the elements. And you have like other saints like Saint David the Dendrite, who I learned about, who lived in a tree for a long time. I can't remember how long, but I start going like on the job got when I feel like I'm on fire and in the heat and have sweat dripping off of me and all this horrible stuff. I'll just sometimes, I'll ask like these particular saints like pray for me, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, it doesn't happen all the time, but it's like I can't think it's a coincidence, and there'll be like a sort of a comforting breeze, and it's kind of weird. There's oh man, I forgot we were on the subject of prayer, and this is just how my brain works. I go down a rabbit trail and forget where I was, but a more regular prayer routine as opposed to wait, it was on that. I was mentioning how you mentioned that you found that you actually pray a lot more than you used to. And I was just relating to that, and then my mind started going on the tangents with the intercessory prayer and but like
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah, that
that's a whole topic itself, because that's when Protestants hear that, they're like, "Oh, that is idolatry." Something I have felt personally is the intercession of prayer. Um, I haven't really. I think Saint Nicholas is. You asked me when we were catching up on text. Has there been anybody that I have I've felt very close to? Um, I think Saint Nicholas, but he's such one of the early bishops of the church. There's a lot of stories out there about him, slapping Arius in the face,
yeah.
and it's just like one of those things, like the guy that spawned the Santa Claus myth. There's a lot of myths around it, but I do like the aspects of the relation to the orphan, the poor, and the association. And he's the patron saint of sailors, um, and just kind of going around and uh, specifically, I need to. I'll talk to my priest after, but I came across Saint Hubert of Liege. This was I want to say he's around 749 AD, and he was in the area that was like the Franken. Let me pull it up. There's always getting messages about this. Oh, you got it wrong. Hey man, I'm not a professional historian, so bug off. Hubert of Liege, Saint, first Bishop of Liege of 656 to 727. Christian became saint in 70 AD, 708 AD, patron saint of hunters, mathematicians, opticians, and metalworkers, known as the Apostle of Ardennes. He's famous because let me screen share this real fast. He Here's a stained glass of it. He's famous because, as the story goes, it's a French website. Forgive people, but here we go. Uh, the story goes that he was a famous hunter and he went out to go hunt, and he has this experience of a stag coming out, and he sees Christ on a cross, and he basically gave up hunting and became a very prominent church figure. And um, he was known for his arithmetic, so that's how he became the one of the only saints associated with mathematicians. And something I'm doing right now is I'm studying for an Air Force test for, and two of the it's like a test with multiple tests, and a part of that is there's math questions on there, and I don't get a calculator, so I'm having to learn mental mathematics again. And so I've been asking for intercessions through St. Hubert, and I found some very wonderful prayers and I have noticed a difference. And that's just one of many cases I've had where, you know, I don't feel like it's them. I'm not praying to them. I'm asking for their assistance, like we would ask, like our parents to pray for us or to help us. Um, and
Yeah, you're not worshiping your parents.
no, no.
Yeah, like it's it's
And it,
really it's same thing, really.
and if the other world is around us at all times, like how can we not ask for that assistance? Like how is that idolatry? Oh, there's a shrine and you're venerating and you're kissing, blah 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 blah. But meanwhile, they go and do their praise worship and they love their bishop and or their pastor who's like, okay, we need another jet. And then they're like, oh, I'll sell, I'll put my house on equity and I'll take a loan out against it so we can get this jet so you can go fly to wherever to preach the gospel. Um, at that point, you're just worshiping a man utilizing you for your resources.
Yeah.
Not to say
And
there's genuine people, but
yeah, and I mean there's a lot of Protestantism that doesn't even agree with that type of like, the prosperity gospel stuff, but then still you have um there's a massive spectrum to Protestantism. You have like the higher church, which is I lived in Germany till I was 6, and like there's a lot of like even Lutheranism and things like that. It's a lot more reverent, but it's you hear here in America you have like all the evangelical like Baptists, Pentecostals, Church of Christ, et cetera, et cetera, and um yeah this I'll try not to go total derailment this time. But when our priest was bringing up like this is how he sort of phrased it, and I'm gonna try not to butcher what Father Seth told us, but I brought up the analogy about like how it felt like knocking on the ceiling to communicate to God, and now it feels like the kingdom of heaven's all around us. Um, there's this idea in Protestantism, and this is where I feel like a lot of this, uh, we can't pray to the saints. That's idolatry. They don't hear your prayers. They're dead. Like all this stuff comes from is this idea of a two-story universe where we're in the bottom story. Everybody that is passed on in Christ, and they're all in this upper story. And the most we can do is really knock on the ceiling. They'll claim that that's not what it means, but it's how it feels, It's pretty much like we're on our own. We're separate from the kingdom of heaven, We've really screwed up. We're totally depraved. We're like just completely dirty wretches that can't do anything about it. Um, and so all we can do is sit down here in this in I'm gonna I'm gonna drop the name of the record label I'm on, God's Basement Records, but we can just sit down here in God's basement, and knock on the ceiling now and then and it's just like sorry, and it's like, well, I'll let you up here one day, or and then there's like a single story understanding to Orthodoxy where it's like, yeah, we're sinners, it's but we're all called to be saints. And that's um and yeah, I'm almost derailing here because I'm getting into all the total depravity stuff here. But with the there we're all connected. There's when and I'm not 100% theologically wise on this, but when Christ defeated death when he descended into Hades and brought up all the righteous souls. There's there's not much explicit mention of intercessory prayer in the New Testament, and I get that that's a common argument among Protestants. But to my knowledge, and hopefully I'm not theologically misunderstanding something here, but paradise wasn't full of souls prior to the harrowing of hell, you know. Everybody was still in Hades, in the domain of death. And so it's kind of no wonder that it probably wasn't a common practice till after the resurrection. It's if I'm even making sense here, but the like it comes down to we serve a God of the living, and then all that are in Christ are alive. You know, St. Paul even talks about that we're surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. And I had a guy one time try to tell me it's like, oh, but they're not actual witnesses, and I was kind of like, like um. It's kind of what it says right there. They witness what we're doing. That's it's kind of funny how it's bad to for me to go Saint Tikhon, pray to God for me, or Saint Olga of Alaska. I ask for her prayers a lot, or Saint Joseph the Hesychist. Like uh I don't get why there's this belief that these people are not witnessing what's going on, but then the same people will go like, well, if Grandma, if you're watching me, if you're smiling down upon me, I hope you're happy with what I'm doing in life. Yeah, things like that. And I'm like, well, that's the same principle, like but yeah, intercessory prayer is kind of like I've really had to just allow my idea of Christianity to be completely reinvented when I hit a wall with Protestant theology and Protestant belief, and didn't always been fascinated with Orthodoxy, and now it's sort of um yeah, like uh, next time you lose your keys or anything, ask Saint Fenorios to pray for you, and it's kind of weird how your car keys will just suddenly be somewhere where you're pretty sure you looked, and it's something else, and it works, and it's just a wonderful way to be in communion with both the those in Christ who are here and those who have departed.
And then it brings it closer to a more relatable experience, and it's not you are completely alone in this. Um and I've always found it interesting once you start reading about the Gnostic Gospels and about Gnosticism as there's this great deity that's evil and it's punishing us, and then there's a whole bunch of nonsense. But a lot of the ideas of Gnosticism I find kind of prevalent in this new Protestantism, which is hilarious uh, in its own. And it's almost like the heresies that were refuted during the councils, ecumenical councils 1 through 7, uh, are alive and well. And that's why it's important to have a traditional church with high church that does have a body that they can argue and say what is and what is not canonically correct, or this is what we actually believe. It just Because without it, you're at the whims of whoever you're going to church to.
Yeah, and there's no unity in that. There's if it's doesn't make sense. Like I'd said, like it just makes no sense to me that in the like evangelical world here in the US, and not to mention that it's just some form of new wave Christianity that hardly exists outside of the United States. There's like some areas in the Western world where, you also have like in a lot of Latin America, you have a lot of the same denominations, but um there's this idea that we're all united body of Christ, but there's so many just nobody agrees, you know. It's like I kind of imagine my own body and I'm just constantly punching myself or like, fighting my own body, just fighting like that's what well, that's what's supposed to be the body of Christ. It doesn't make sense. And then oh, one thing actually I've got it right here. All these, different schisms, all these different sects. There's a I had this like on a printout forever, the letters of Saint Ignatius of Antioch. And this was a direct disciple of the Apostle John. And, with scripture talking about, um, uh, upholding traditions. And then like, you have this direct disciple of the apostles and he's talking and he talks in these epistles. He's, he's more blunt than I am, he says like he straight up tells people avoid schismatics. Like if anybody's preaching, and I mean the scriptures say too, like anyone preaching a gospel contrary to ours, um, like the Apostle Paul, he was not, schizophrenic, like constantly disagreeing with himself. And on it's like if somebody preaches something contrary to contrary to this, like don't listen to them. And people these days read that and apply that to like some n- they're like new age schismatic sect that is in no way connected to apostolic tradition. And I was like, yeah, if anybody preaches like something different to this, like, that's kind of cultish, and like yeah, it's yeah, like the it just doesn't to me it's just so doesn't make sense to me that, like I said, this division, this spot that the body of Christ is supposedly so divided in belief and in tradition, and they um it makes a lot more sense that when I look at the history of the church, sorry, I'm getting distracted. That we should all be united in our doctrines and our practices and our and what we believe. That when you come up for communion, and communion should only be served like the Eucharist should be shared only among those that are united in this faith. I can't. I it doesn't. These ideas of subjective truth that Christ, who is the truth, can be whoever we feel he is, that when the Holy Spirit is guiding or brought this to me, as they say, it's like it's just however we feel. Like it doesn't sound right. That sounds the Holy Spirit wouldn't divide people like that, wouldn't tell one guy this and then it's like, well, my Holy Spirit disagrees with yours. This like it doesn't oh man. But yeah, um
And it's so commonplace to see that, especially if you church hop. You see that all the time. And if you don't believe me, do it for a year. You got 52 Sundays. Go to 52 different churches each Sunday.
yeah. Yeah, I think I don't think I even have the patience for that. I think I may have been in well, prior to Orthodoxy, five or so different churches, but I only ever attended one. The rest were just visits because that's where the people I was with were going. I think most of the churches around here that I've visited growing up were before I was even a Christian, so I kind of just sat there and was like, yeah, whatever. But yeah, it's unfortunate and there's unfortunately also it's most of the time there's just not much reverence, especially in kind of like the Southern Baptist sphere where it's like we're supposed to be here to worship and it's the whole service is just 45 minutes of stand-up comedy. CD. But yeah, it's I sometimes I just feel like people aren't honest with themselves because, you really got to ask the question is like, do you think this is really what the apostles taught and practiced? And like really, be honest with yourself about it. And it's just like, no, I I almost feel like sometimes like some non-believers, you gotta look at their reaction and think like they're repulsed by this. There's hardly anybody who's an atheist or an agnostic or a neo-pagan wants anything to do with this. And we're trying to say this is the same faith that just brought in masses of pagans to Christianity. And and then these days, the people that practice like paganism or agnostic or atheist, they're just completely repulsed by what's being called Christianity here in America. No, you have to, I feel like you have to take that into consideration. And because contrary to some popular belief, like the pagans for the most part were not violently converted. And I mean, you even see that with, in a more contemporary sense, with the missions in Alaska in the 1700s when the Russian Orthodox monks came to Alaska and they pretty much just, the natives converted to Orthodox Christianity as a not out of force or submission to like foreign invaders or anything, but because it was a completion of and like a fulfillment of what they were already believing. And they already believed that there was some force of life that permeated through everything. They viewed nature in a very Eucharistic fashion. Um, when they went out and hunted and like they killed a deer, they considered that like nature or the universe, sacrificing, giving that as an offering, and it was very, its cycle is very Eucharistic, and these Russian Orthodox monks like Saint Herman of Alaska, they came and was like, oh, well, that force of life, that's Christ, and and like they just fulfill they did they converted because they realized, oh, this is the truth, not because somebody was pointing a gun at, and I'm just saying this because there's a lot of popular belief, and it's an easy conclusion to come to in the state of a lot of modern Christian sects, that all these ancient conversions back in the day of the pagans and whatnot was violent, was forced, that where a lot of us are descendants of people that were oppressed by Christians, and it's in the full apostolic faith as it should be, that's not the case. There's always going to be people that reject it no matter what, unfortunately, but for the most part, it was a lot of lost people, and genuine Christians came to them and offered them like Christ, like presented Christ pretty much as he honestly is. And they were like, oh, and light bulb went off and they converted.
Let me see if I can get the story here. Maybe I'm trying to remember it. There's so okay, that's the problem with Orthodoxy, and I'd say Western Catholicism. There's so much history.
Yeah.
There's too much. You could pick 50 years at some time period and make that your thesis and your doctorate dissertation. That's not what I'm looking for. Not the 40 mark. Uh, oh, what somebody if you know, please comment on the Spotify or the YouTube. But there was a man that was a saint, later became a saint. This was early church history, like pre-schism, and somebody didn't like what he was saying, and so they ordered his execution. And one of the people that was selected to execute him just was so moved by his faith and could see the radiance of God shining on him that he dropped his sword and joined him.
There's there's actually quite a lot of very similar like accounts of this. And I mean there's I think you mentioned something about 40 martyrs. That may have been
Oh,
the Christians
oh,
that
40 martyrs is Sebast. They were
yes. Yeah.
soldiers quartered in Sebast, Armenia, about year 320. Their legion was ordered to offer sacrifice. They separated themselves from the rest, and the company formed a company of martyrs. After they had been torn by scourges and iron hooks, they were chained together and led into a lingering death, cruel winter, and condemned to lie naked on the icy surface of a pond in the open air till they were frozen to death. But they ran undismayed to a place of combat, joyfully stripped their garments, and one voice besought God to keep their tanks unbroken. 40, they cried, we have come to combat. Grant that 40 may be crowned. And then while they were wondered at the deficiency in number, one of the confessors lost heart, renounced his faith, crawled to the fire, died body and soul at the spot where he expected relief. But a soldier was inspired to confess Christ and take his place, and the number of 40 was complete.
Yeah, there was yeah, one of the soldiers, and I believe he actually had an angel visit him, one of the guards, and the angel had 40 crowns and said that there were only 39, had an extra crown, basically, and then the soldier was moved by this and went into the lake with the rest. And yeah, what had happened was they had like a little a little house with a fire for warmth for anybody that would renounce their faith could go in there and warm up. And that's what this one soldier did. He renounced his faith, and then when he went into the warmth, he just died. And it's yeah, there's oh man, so many even to this day, I know I'm particularly moved by um what the Russian Orthodox Church suffered under the Bolsheviks. I often find it just completely shameful that it's just never talked about, whether in history class or anything. And it's the numbers are not even totally clear, but it's over 50 million Russian Christians. Uh, Probably, and I've heard some estimates say it could be as high as 100 million were killed under communism. And in the early days, like my patron saint, Saint Tikhon of Moscow, he was he's not only a missionary that was extremely influential in the spread of Orthodoxy in America. Like he's considered one of his titles is the Enlightener of America. Uh, Let me see, Enlightener of North America. Yeah, I've actually got this. That right there is the icon of him I have that I got from my godfather when I was baptized. But he's also, you know, considered a confessor. He was the first patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church in a couple of centuries because they had gotten rid of the patriarchate, I guess you could say. Um, and they elected him when the Bolsheviks were taking over, and they slaughtered the royal family. Tsar Nicholas II and his family are all canonized saints in the Orthodox Church because they were martyred. And he uh he endured a lot of he some believe he was martyred, that he may have been poisoned. I'm not 100% sure. It very well could be. I know that um Trotsky had said at one point that he wanted him assassinated, and then Lenin told him, no, we're not going to make a martyr of him, things like that. It was a very cruel time, but you see a lot of that, that it's one of the things that's really moved me towards Orthodoxy is how severe the church is still persecuted. And like when you look at what was going on under communism, it's very reminiscent of those days of pagan Rome. And you know, you had bishops that were executed for treason just because they would not give up hand over the sacramental items of the belongings of the church to the officials. And you had this happen with a series of priests that were put on trial, and they invited a patriarch Tikhon. This, when he was still here, he was officially like a canonized saint for several decades later. But it's either way, he was a living saint then. That's the way how. But they invited him to this trial, and I guess in hopes he'd convince these priests to hand over these sacramental belongings of the church, which the Bolsheviks, they were saying, oh, we were going to sell them to give to the poor. And Saint Tikhon said, well, the church can give you would be more than happy to give you whatever money you wish to give to the poor. And there's like, oh no, we're not doing that. Their motives were obviously something else. But they told him, we're going to execute these priests if they don't for treason if they don't hand this over. And Saint Tikhon just gave them all the priests his blessing for their martyrdom. And it's like it's very those times like that really just uh we have it made right now. We're in this we're living here in the US. It's the Orthodox faith is there's some parts of the country where it's getting a little weird. I know Washington State has passed a law to breach the seal of confession, where priests are required to turn in anyone who confesses any kind of crime, which, you know, a crime can be whatever the local government wants it to be. But because I mean, like I just said, in Soviet Russia, it was considered pretty much treason just to practice your Orthodox faith in its full depth. But those times like that just really, and those who the saints really are in such times, because these are the men and women that just will not waver no matter what anybody does to them. And it's it's just it's really something else. And like I said, we're living in some comfortable times, and it could be a blessing, but it I don't know, this recent history in Russia and Romania and even Georgia, the nation of Georgia, it really is kind of eye-opening. It's like, oh, Christ Christianity is still persecuted in this world. This world still does not, want anything to do with full legitimate Christianity. It's not going to end till Christ comes back.
There's a war on traditional families, and that's what the Bolshevik Revolution realized, that if they kept killing Christians, they just keep making more martyrs. And so that's when they switched the wheels from slaughtering until they gave up their idiocy, is what they felt it, and their traditionalism, and then they they switched to, okay, we can't convert them, but what if we get somebody who's a sympathizer in there? And so that's why we have the new modern OC, or the ROC, and that's why they've been intrinsically tied with the government in Russia now, because of all those people who suffered. Which there's a good benefit of that, the Orthodox faith has been able to stand strong and to flourish, and its roots are deep. Um, but then at the same time, you this Russian and Ukraine aggression, and the priests are out blessing the soldiers, and when you look at it, it's just an Orthodox from Russia and an Orthodox from Ukraine fighting each other with a knife in a trench, and it's sad that we're having
Yeah.
to fight each other.
Yeah, so it's really I've heard a lot of people talk about it and how demonic this war really is, because it's Orthodox Christians killing Orthodox Christians, just like you said, and it's the devil's laughing. It's a ridiculous situation, and I mean, Now, gotta applaud anybody that just throws their gun down and says, "I'm not doing this." It's because it's ridiculous. It's, people that are brothers in faith just slaughtering each other um for the sake of the interests of their political interests of their nation. And I used to, even just a few months ago, I was probably oversympathetic for current Russia, but there's things I start seeing over time, when you really look into the facts of the matter, and it's like the Russian Orthodox Church has a KGB patriarch. It's you
Yeah.
got like I was on the treadmill at my local gym like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it's playing the news, and I usually just ignore it, but when it's showing legitimate footage, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, then they're still flying communist colors at their on their national holidays, and the patriarch and Putin, everybody's there, and it's like, do you still want to applaud this? And I think it was like a Soviet Victory Day parade, and it's just kind of like, oh man, the way I look at it is to be as blunt as possible. It's like, oh, a regime that slaughtered 50 million Christians ruthlessly, an atheistic regime, beat the Nazis who slaughtered a few million, but it's like like either way, it's like it still feels weird to watch this and go like we're celebrating the success of a entity that was like far worse. I mean, 50 million Christians. It's just and they're celebrating like this and it's like, yeah, okay, it's but I don't know. There's a lot of it's just very, and I mean, Ukraine, I I don't like Zelensky. I don't know many people who do, but both both sides in that war, it's just to me, it's just more time passes, the more I just see it as senseless. And you
Yeah.
have
A quick 3-day operation is turning into a 3-year, and there Russia is close to losing, nearly having lost nearly 1 million soldiers. And it's just grotesque that recently there's footage of drone usage where they utilized a truck that was acting as a mothership, they hired local drivers. They didn't tell them what was in there. They said, drive to these points, drop the check, get it, drop the truck, get out. You just earned a ton of money. I'm like, all right, you're trying to earn money in a hard economy right now. You just drive a truck, drop it off, just happens to be behind an airbase, and the drones fly out and blow up, a good 70% of Russia's bomber force and crippled, three of their only remaining, assets. And how does Russia respond in kind? By striking children hospitals and striking apartments and killing pregnant mothers and children in school zones. And it's like, it's really hard. It's really hard to say that. And then you can see that there's, some Orthodox that are on that side cheering for that. And it's like,
it's
that's so sad.
misinformed. It's
It,
like I
yeah,
said, like I just a few months ago, I was a lot more sympathetic towards Russia, and I think in a way it's just me having this wishfulness that, I think of like because Russia was a lot more Christian than it is now, like 100 years ago. Before, like, because communism, Russia has not recovered from it, and I mean that Russia has some very rich Christian history, but it may be on its way back up, but it's still very Russia's been heavily wounded and by what the communists did, and the church in Russia, it's there's I don't know if I'd use the term compromise, but it's there's yeah. You think you know what I mean?
it, and then that's something that is sad because if somebody is interested, they go and look at that and they're like, how is that? There's just a lot. That could be somebody that would put a distaste in their mouth, and it's problematic in that aspect. but at the same time, if it's kind of like for the church to exist in Russia, that's what it has to do. So it's like I I pray for those people in that situation. Um, and likewise, we've got Egypt, who what's the story? Egypt. I want to make it. I want to Egypt opening monastery. There's a controversy where Egypt is St. Catherine's Monastery.
Yeah, I think I've heard
It's
about
a
this.
it's a Greek delegation prepares to move to Cairo to resolve tensions over the fate of St. Catherine's Monastery in Sinai. Um, Sixth century monastery tucked beneath Egypt's highest mountain range is immense religious and historical cultural significance. The immediate cause was a recent Egypt's Ismaili administration appeal court, which affirmed the state's ownership of the land of which the Greek Orthodox monastery sits, upholding the monks' rights to worship and utilize the site. Though Egyptian officials have repeatedly reassured Greek counterparts, the court's decision will not impact the monastery's religious standing or ruling autonomy. But it raised alarms in Athens and among Greek Orthodox Church hierarchies. Compliments Greek media. Um, it doesn't really go into it, but there's a dispute where they basically want to turn it in this monastery that has very few. I think it's like one or two people living there. They want to turn it into a museum, and it's just we keep seeing desecration of Christian sites in the name of Islam,
Yeah.
and it's another aspect. It's like I think the biggest issue with Christianity is like there's so much going on. It's like pick your fight.
Yeah.
And right now it's
Persecuted from all directions.
like beginning this year, my priest was originally supposed to go to Syria. He was going to go do a tour, and he was going to go visit some of these sites and meet some of these stuff. And I want to say he mentioned he was being granted to bring back some relics. I don't know the specific details, but because of all the aggression with Israel and Hamas and now Lebanon, all the places he was going to go, he can't. He had to cancel that because it isn't safe. And it's
Yeah.
like it's very sad, and it's like the there's true Christian suffering, and it's like do you got you get Billy Bob over here going you're idolaters because you're praying to an icon like like
Yeah.
that's what you take from that. Okay, there's
Yeah.
there's there's people in church history who have resoundingly consistently became martyrs.
I mean,
um,
most of the people really suffering that are Christians in these parts of the world, they practice this kind of stuff. And I don't hear people really like, denying that they're genuine Christians when you hear a news story about like 40 gosh, was it? No, 21, I think 21 Coptic martyrs that were executed by ISIS years ago. And I mean, like the Coptic or they're not Eastern Orthodox, but a lot of their uh, practices are the same. They have icons and like things like that, and it's like nobody's calling them idolaters. Yeah, it's like it's mostly either Eastern Orthodox or similar, or other um Catholic style faiths that are being really persecuted. You don't go to these parts of the world and see Southern Baptist churches get bombed. It's and Uh, it's gosh, it's something. Oh man, not to get too political here, but when I see all like the American evangelicals, just like and I don't really pick too much of a dog in this fight, but if you're flying the Israeli flag and they kind of you can't go over there and preach your faith in the streets. It's like, but what's going on in Gaza there, it's not just a war between Muslims and Jews. Like there's churches, like Orthodox churches that have been bombed or have been clergy are being harassed and attacked or thing like it's like look at what the Orthodox Christians in that region say about what American evangelicals living way over here in the comfort zone consider our greatest ally, and like that, that we're supposed to like we're divinely mandated to fund the nation of Israel and their political interests. And it's just we're so insensitive here, Like we think some atheist making fun of us is persecution.
That I think that's it's kind of like the argument of good and evil that I haven't really read. I haven't gotten to that. I'm currently going through Thomas Hopka's basically 4 volume catechism. I need to repent. I need to get better on it. I have a goal of reading 10 pages a day. I haven't been very
I,
consistent on
I
that.
suck at reading, so you don't worry
Yeah.
about it.
I and then on top of it, I'm a goofball and I get assigned, extra reading stuff on top of what I'm already reading on top of you can't see it because the thing is there, but I have a library behind me that's slowly growing. My rule of don't buy a new book until you're done with the others hasn't been really working out.
I
um,
semi live by it, but not completely.
and then I see I have so many books on my buy it now or it's out of print, so I'm waiting for it. And anyway. Um, Without evil, you can't appreciate the good. And I don't know if that's something that Orthodox Christianity confesses to. I'm gonna research that real fast, but
I'd say like without suffering, like replace the word evil with suffering, you might, and that might be like a little more because it's just yeah, I think I see what you're getting at though.
okay, let me see. Okay, that's kind of based. I found a Orthodox blog called the Orthodox Road, and it's showing a screenshot from the movie Boondock Saints of the two brothers. Okay, interesting. Filioque by Saint Didacodius of Photicia. Evil does not exist by nature, nor is any man naturally evil, for God made nothing that was not good. When in the desire of his heart someone conceives and gives form to what in reality has no existence, then what he desires begins to exist. We should therefore turn our attention away from the inclination to evil and concentrate on the remembrance of good. For good, which exists by nature, is more powerful than our inclination to evil. The one that has existence while the other does not, except when we give it existence through our actions. And then Archbishop Callistus Ware said in Orthodox way, evil is twisting of what is in itself good. Evil resides not in the thing itself, but in the attitude towards the thing. That is to say, the evil in the heart. So it's
Yeah,
kind of like that, but different. So I'll have to jot that down. And that was from Orthodox Road, Father Jeremy. Hopefully, it's a canonical church. that's that's the other hard thing trying to research about orthodoxy. And you find some stuff, and then later find out like he's not canonically accepted or he's a fringe, and it's just like, oh my gosh.
yeah, there are
Uh,
still there's still like churches that are like, oh, we're Eastern Orthodox, but they've split. Like you have like the what call themselves like the genuine Orthodox, and I think if I'm not mistaken, they chose to schism from the other Orthodox churches in the past century over issues like the calendar stuff and like things like probably a lot of it's politics. I've heard of priests that like have like had like some very ultra nationalist views or whatnot, and then joined a sectarian, like a schismatic Orthodox church because they're because they got a talking to from the bishop and, wouldn't calm down and you wouldn't chill out. And it's like, I don't think any priest would ever get defrocked over politics, Like, I think it's as long as you're not a heretic, or not like abusing your flock or anything like that. It doesn't matter really what political views you conform to, but it's when I've heard of like some priests that just got way too zealous about it to where it like they were being disobedient to their bishops and things like that and got defrocked and went to a sectarian like a schismatic Orthodox church and it's just it's silly, because like to me, it's like I've got my views on things, but this comes first, and yeah, it's um, but yeah, I mean, I've heard in a similar sense to that quote from Callistos, where that sin in itself is just a misuse of something good, it's that yeah, I'd say it probably ties in just about the same.
There's there's a piece though that once you could kind of figure out like um who you should be listening to, and there's the topic of, everyone's going to be accountable at the final judgment for everything they teach and say. So there's a hope that you hope that your priest is not schismatic or is saying things wrong. And if you get on the Orthodox Reddit and you post something and somebody, you get a mod notification that your post was removed because it was schismatic in nature, or the priest, for instance, Father Spiriton had a video that I was very moved by, and I shared that on there. And then people are commenting about like how he's a anti-Semite ultra white nationalist, and I'm just like, wait,
Oh
I
God.
I like the Orthodox subreddit, but sometimes it's like it's so wild. And then sometimes stuff gets posted on there and you're like, how has that not been removed yet? It's just like it's so crazy.
These
Um
are these are folks that see somebody go, sorry, I don't agree with Zionism, and then go, oh, he hates Jews. It's yeah,
yeah. But it's like, okay, so you accept that the Israel state can just,
do
shoot
whatever
up
they want.
Orthodox churches and spit on Orthodox people. And like you could literally go to YouTube and find countless videos of Orthodox Jews insulting and spitting and calling for the death of Christians. They want all of Israel to be the kingdom of Israel again. And what does that mean? Non-Israelites out. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter if there have people been living there longer. And it's just like the West just can't wake up to it. And it's you walk by and you see a MAGA hat where it's got camo, and on the back of it it's got "For Israel We Stand." And it's like, okay, you believe in free speech, but did you know that the Israeli government is paying politicians to pass laws to make it a federal crime to talk bad about Israel? How do we have free
yeah,
speech if we're doing that? And it's just like there's so much going on.
yeah.
But back to the topic of priests. I was called out, and that's why I've been much more cautious because I'm not even a catechumen. I'm very interested. I hope, and I'll talk about that in a second. But uh, I was told by my priest specifically to ignore what's his name? Got to get it right. Peter Hears.
I've
Uh,
heard that. Yeah,
he's not in standing. He there's a whole the ecclesiastical standing. You can go to orthodoxtheology.com. It's been since 2022. It's been this controversy. He's had a video that he explains his side of it. It's very detailed. Anyway, um, I was told by him, skip his videos. Uh, and
Yeah,
that's my priest. So I'm going to listen to what my priest says. And so I think,
he's not the only priest that says that about Father. Yeah, I've heard he's not even under a bishop, and there's yeah, it's I think my priest has even told somebody not to watch Father Peter Hears or listen to him.
and then I accidentally mixed up Josiah Trenum with Father Josiah Trenum with Father Peter Hears, because they're very kind of similar. Um,
Yeah, I think Father Josiah Trenum, he's pretty great. I think my priest even somebody asked him like was like, "Oh, is he good to watch?" And Father Seth, my priest was like, "Well, for my taste, he gets a little too political sometimes, but I don't think he's all right, you know." And a lot of people like him. I actually have a Facebook friend that goes to his parish, and he's Antiochian, I think, Father Josiah Trenum.
yeah, I'm pretty sure he is as well. Oh, what's his name? I got to go to YouTube. The one priest I really do like because he's actually from Utah and he's had a lot of content about LDS
Is it Father Paul
Orthodox.
Trubenbach?
Yes, Trubenbach, Father Paul
Yeah.
Trubenbach. I want to meet him. I'm supposed to go visit Utah next year, and I really want to meet him. I'll bring my podcasting stuff with me. I should be set up and have another microphone and start doing more in person. I'm trying to get with the a couple people. There's some Orthodox down in Colorado that I'm like, look, man, I'm gonna drive down, rent a hotel, and we can set up and have a discussion. Just let me know when you're available. I'll make it happen. I want to do more in-person podcasting. Uh, Unfortunately, my room isn't set up right now. It's kind of an office and spare bedroom, work schedule kind of thing. It's a little bit different, but it's really hard when somebody's new into Orthodoxy. They don't have a clue, and I know I didn't have a clue. I saw you see somebody wearing the priestly clothes and you're like, oh, like, oh, he's a priest. And uh, when my priest was over here, this topic came up, and he said he's been following this guy who walks, dress, and talks to where it's like, oh, if you didn't know any better, he was a bishop. But my priest, after a while, started to notice he says some things that a bishop, it's just like so slight, you wouldn't catch it if you don't know the theology of it.
Yeah. I
And
think I've
that
heard of this too.
and, and it's like it's so crazy because I was going to do a music video about my song, which I've an issue with. I finally got a better CPU, so I need to see how mixing music is on that because I was getting latency, so I upgraded to a higher model CPU, so hopefully that helps. But I had a song about the martyrs of Japan. I was going to shoot this music video of the Catholic Jesuit priest going to Japan, and there's a whole movie and stuff on it. And I was going to go buy this like Halloween cassock and just kind of do this video and have this photo shoot. You can go buy priestly clothes investments. And
Yeah.
I've gone and looked at some of these websites. I could buy a full wardrobe to be an Orthodox priest and wear everything. Um,
Yeah.
but it's
It's
like that doesn't make you a priest though, and so we have to be cautious. And when you're not new and you've been getting those really spicy Orthodox bro TikTok videos and you start listening to stuff, it's just uh beguiled by ignorance. You know what I mean? Like you don't know any better, that this person is probably not somebody you should be listening to. So
yeah, there is a very I know years ago when I first got introduced to Orthodoxy online, I would join meme groups, and I mean there's a culture of even people that claim they're Orthodox and they've never even visited a church. I had, like they think, oh, this is a cool aesthetic or something. And I'm like, no, that's a very kind of really Protestant way of looking at it, where it's like you can just say, oh, I'm Orthodox because you think it's cool because of some stuff you saw online or but yeah, there's a you'd have to be careful on the internet. Our priest tells us this fairly often. You've got some wonderful priests that have an online platform, like we mentioned Father Paul Trubenbach, um, Father Josiah Trenum. There's gosh, who I like Father Spiridon. I feel like some people just throw such accusations, like you mentioned, just because he's honest and ain't afraid to speak the truth. But uh, you gotta. There's I'm very cautious with this. There's a lot of people like the online debate sphere, and like I feel like my priest would advise against it. I know a lot of clergy are not very fond of like Jay Dyer, and me personally, I like some of his stuff. He can be pretty funny, and I kind of like the comedy. I get why some people, clergy especially, tell you to be careful because he can be very, very blunt, in a almost well, in a pretty mean way sometimes when he loses his patience with people he's debating. Um, I actually, funny enough, his godfather goes to my church, and so in a way, that's why like I can't. I feel like I'd feel weird about being like, yeah, no, I'm not a big Jay Dyer fan, like and because I mean, like some of his stuff is funny. He's made some comedic videos, like his if you ever look up like Jay Dyer mega church, he did these videos where he impersonates a mega church pastor, and they're hilarious. But there is this sort of online sphere and like the whole debater area. Like people kept asking me, it's like, did you watch the debate between Ubi Petrus and Voice of Reason, I think, whose Voice of Reason is an Eastern Catholic, and they had this big debate, and the Catholics were saying that Ubi Petrus was an asshole, and the Orthodox were going, the Voice of Reason was just rambling and like bumbling a bunch of but I can't get into it too much. I'm like there's so much just that's a lot of the online spheres, these debaters and a lot of arguing and this and that, and then you gotta watch out for unofficial priests and like there's I'd recommend just sticking to um sorry, I get indigestion now and then. There's a Roots of Orthodoxy. So I'm just gonna grab a water. Roots of Orthodoxy is a channel I was watching a good here and there during the early months when I was first coming into the church, and they pretty much just do interviews with various priests. Father Paul Trubenbach's been on there a couple times, a few times I think. Stuff like that's cool, and you kind of just gotta watch what you get into. There's so much crap out there on the internet.
Yeah, I think roots of Orthodoxy, I would say that there's a lot more agreement that they typically have more canonical and less harsh priests on there. Father Seraphim Holland, I've enjoyed listening to him talk, and Father Joseph Trubin, and there's a couple other ones. Father Justin Havens has some really great stuff. Um, there's some other videos I found. I can't remember their name. There's a monastery in Arizona, in the head is it Abbott? That's one of the lead monk. He's been going through some health problems. He's an older gentleman, and he does like shorts of like uh it's very beautiful. I try to find it. I can't find it. I have so much stuff in my YouTube history because I probably watch too much YouTube.
Is it
Because
Abbott Trifon?
yeah, Abbott Trifon.
Hopefully I pronounced that
Yeah,
right.
he is phenomenal. Vashon Monks is his at on YouTube, and I want to go visit this monastery. Although I have to be cautious because I may not want to leave.
Yeah. Well, you're married, so I mean, you
Yeah,
have to.
yeah.
I
Um,
need to get married first and then visit a monastery.
but there is a way for if you are married that you and your spouse take vows of celibacy. There's been times in Orthodox history, I'd say more in Russian tradition, that the spouse, one of the spouses decides they want to go in a monastic lifestyle, and then the other one joins and becomes a nun as well. So um, and that's a whole thing in itself.
Yeah, there is a. Actually, I didn't know. I admire Saint John of Kronstadt a lot. And actually, looking at this, I got this. It's sort of just like a paper icon in a picture frame, but that's him. And oh, light glare. But he he was he's a priest during the late 1800s. He reposed in 1909, I think, a Russian priest. And he has a book called My Life in Christ that is just wonderful. I got it for Christmas. I've barely dug into it, but it's just full of spiritual fruit, and it's not even in chapters. You just get paragraph upon paragraph of just continuing substance. And but I didn't know that he was married, and him and his wife had celibacy vows. Like they were just married, uh, yeah, for I guess ascetic purposes. And I was like, wow, that was cool. Like, because I didn't even know he was married. I thought he was like a single priest for a long time. And then I found out about that, and like that he had a wife, but they didn't have children, and they vow of chastity, pretty much, I guess you could say. And it's rare, but there's people that do that, and I see nothing wrong with it, and you have a lot of um this we live in a very sexually revolutionized culture where even a lot of Christian believers go they're like find uh um living a life of chastity to be taboo, and it's like, why? It's and I especially hate it when it comes to this idea that the Theotokos was not permanently a lifelong virgin, that she that when the scripture said like brother of the Lord, they take that literal. It's like, oh, Jesus had brothers, the Virgin Mary had children. She was only a virgin till after the birth of Christ, and all these horrible ideas that uh and I hate it because it's just people just cannot. I feel like people just can't stand the idea that somebody can be totally chaste. And they look at like the Theotokos and what we believe about her, and go like, oh, that's crazy. How could you put her up on a pedestal like that? And it's like, it, yeah, we just culture we live in, it's such, monasticism is weird. Like around here in the Bible Belt, you try to talk about somebody that leaves the luxury of society for a quiet monastery, and they see that as a person that is leaving behind his Christian duties of going out in the world and like evangelizing for a monastery. And it's like, no, that's not the case. And so many monks, so many saints are monastic, and they're still, even in after their departure from this world, people are still being enlightened through them. And that you're trying to say that that's there's that's why this culture, people are just repulsed by these ideas of dying to yourself, even within Christian groups, and it's just unfortunate.
But there's light in the process, and um, I think something that's so real about orthodoxy, and I'll share this experience again. It was a couple months after we had our first podcast together, and I was kind of examining my life, and just like a lot of stuff was going on. It's like I hadn't been in church, attending the LDS church for a while, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go see what this is about. And since then, I've denounced the LDS church. I'm trying to get my name removed from the record, uh, and I'm looking forward to this path. But what it was walking in during last Pashka, and the lights are dimmed. It's smoky through the incense, and there was just enough light from the candles and the oil lamps, and the gold on the icons glowed, and it felt so real. And then as the service began, and to hear the prayers, and the readings in Greek and English, and everything, and then having such a divine experience, and then coming home and taking off my wool sweater, and I put it up, and I can smell the fragrance of the incense used, that it's more real than going to church. Because when I would go to an LDS church, typically the services breaks down. It's sometimes, depending on it, they do the bread and water before, and then there's random speakers from the congregation are elected, because the typically in an LDS church, the bishop doesn't preach. It's the congregation gets assigned to speak on a specific subject, typically determined by a ward council meeting that pre-assigns what topics they will talk about, and fall in line with what headquarters in Utah wishes churches kind of follow, or whatever their stake or districts want. And um, the just that just felt so real. I wasn't. It's hard for me to get there, to sit in a pew and just hear people ramble, and then every single talk somebody starts with, "I'm not good at public speaking." Okay, we've heard it a billion times. Every Sunday, somebody gets up and says they're not good at speaking. Likewise, you go to an Orthodox service on Sunday, you go through Orthos, and then you go into the actual liturgy, and um, it's typically, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's typically right after the reading of the Gospels, the priest gives a sermon or a lecture, um, if he feels inclined to do so. And it's just so moved, like I'm so moved and excited to hear what he has to say, and I can reflect on it. And then throughout the rest of the service, I'm reflecting on it. And I thought for a long time that the issue with the LDS churches, there's so many kids, because LDS believe in big families and having tons of kids, and it's we mandate to procreate. And I always thought it was the kids that were distracting. But in the Orthodox service, I have kids tugging on my pant legs, because you're standing there, because there's no pews, because there's so many people. They decided to take the pews out so more people could be in attendance per fire code, right?
Hmm.
And I'm so much more engaged.
But even
I'm
with
s
like the kids get hyper at my church, and it's to me it's just like, oh, this is all part of it. This
Yeah,
ain't a
it
distraction. And I've warmed up to kids more than I ever have since I've become Orthodox. And and it's it kind of the first time in my life where I've really thought, I want kids one day, because I used to, you know, for many years I wanted a partner but didn't really think about having kids, and that's kind of like if you're gonna marry somebody, you should procreate. Like it's or either that or like like there's like chaste marriages too, like I was talking about with St. John of Kronstadt, but it's like for the first time I've really thought, and it ain't easy. But that's kind of part of it. It's just like I started realizing like, children they're both a blessing, but they're also a good way to really die to yourself.
I will, at this part, I will make sure I share this, but it's Orthodox ethos, and it's almost at 1 million views. It's the difference between Protestants and Orthodox service. And it starts with a mega stadium that was rented out, and it's praise worship, and everyone's moving their hands, and there's a band on stage. You're basically at a concert. and then it flips it to the Divine Liturgy in uh, uh in an Orthodox service, and it just and it's during Pascha time or Easter, and you are you are taken away from that. And likewise, you look at some of these churches that don't have, you walk in there and you're like, is this a church or is it like an event hall?
Yeah.
And you go to an LDS church, they don't use crosses. In the foyer and around the building, they'll use random imagery, some famous paintings they have permission of, or they have copyright and control of things from the Book of Mormon and some Old Testament stuff. Sometimes, like one of the churches had a very tall, almost life-size portrait of Moses and the Ten Commandments right there on the wall. And then it's kind of cliche that there's these burlap wallpaper that they use to make the walls durable and endure kids and stuff kicking. And then you sit in, there's pews and rows, and then up there's a stand and seats behind where a choir could sit if they have one. And there's a typically a piano and an organ. They flip which side they're on in each church, and there's a pulpit that people get up and talk to. There's nothing to look at, and it's like the only thing you would have would be like the sacramental table where they prior to the service, the priests, the Aaronic priests, typically teenagers, would be breaking the bread in preparation and then pre-filling disposable cups of water, and they cover it with a white sheet, and that's all the imagery you have.
Hmm.
White walls and staring at people staring back at you. And it's so hard to be so focused. Um and then you go to an Orthodox service and it's not like that. And it's
Yeah.
very moving.
Yeah, it's all, it seems to be all entertainment and symbolism, and it's not what it's about. And I think it's, um, like the Orthodox, like with the Eucharist, we believe it's a literal presence, and you go into like something like what you're talking about, and it's like, oh, we're just going to drink some grape juice and have some bread because it's a symbol, and it's just not the case. In the Orthodox Church, we have closed communion. The only time you're ever going to commune if you're Orthodox is in an Orthodox church. We have my friend Tyler, who's a catechumen at my parish. He started feeling uncomfortable because he goes to guys' meetings with like other Christians every now and then, and he said it's kind of coincidental that it started happening after they learned he was becoming Orthodox. But they started breaking out bread and grape juice, at their meetings, or because it's usually is what it is grape juice. I don't know. They may have done wine, but he asked our priest about it. Father says like, yeah, don't partake. He's like. He's like, the only communion we do is, the actual Eucharist, um, in the Orthodox Church. And that's because like it's a very valuable thing, and it's always been, the belief has always been that this is the literal body and the literal blood of Christ, and it's got to be treated with respect, and it cannot be shared among everyone either. You got to be united to the church and the Orthodox faith, and like you can't just pass it around to everyone, and it's not a clicky thing either, but you mentioned this came to my mind because you mentioned like these concert churches, and I being in the Christian metal scene, something that started just getting on my nerves. Um, is that a lot of people treat the music as their ministry, as and it's like I've loved making death metal for years, and I happen to make it about my faith because it's really the only thing I want to make any of my lyrics about. But there is an idea, and it's just a typical evangelical Christian um thing that anything can be used as a ministry, and there's people that, how do I put it? that treat metal music as like their ministry, and it's like, I mean, no, it's not. I don't want to go to, I don't care for my music to be played as a form of church service. And I just don't think anybody else has met like it's, yeah, it's just there's this idea we can just make anything into church, and I don't agree with it. And it's yeah, church ain't there to be whatever you want it to be.
Um, there's a podcast that you might like called Areopagus. It's by an Orthodox priest and a lifelong friend of his who's a pastor, and I can't remember what church. But they were talking about this article from Christian Today about Holy Saturday, which they called Awkward Saturday, because in Protestant tradition they're trying to find orthodoxy by ignoring orthodoxy, but trying to find it. And so a lot of these people just don't understand. You have the, the Friday to Saturday. Christ was crucified on Friday and he was resurrected on Sunday. What do we do on Saturday? What is Saturday about? And so that's why they call it awkward, because they don't have a high church that has these apostolic traditions that provides what that looks like. And um, it's a wonderful episode. I'm almost done with it. I have about 30 or 40 minutes left on it. I'll also drop that link. I have a lot of show notes I need to make sure I put in the comments here, but
Probably a good bit of editing for all the
yeah,
tangents and
yeah, yeah.
uh.
Um, Orthodox Orthodox ethos, Protestant video, and Areopagus link. Um, it's so different, and it just makes you keep going. And I think that's why I'm okay with it. You're kind of reminiscing on the fact that you felt like your priest put you through really fast, and from what I can see from my current parish is my priest is very not in a rush. And I appreciate that because it makes you want it more. I had an acquaintance of mine whose dad told him, if you really want something, think about it. And in 3 months, if you're still thinking about it, then maybe it's something you should do. Because so many people want that satisfaction, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They want to have their needs filled, and they need that endorphin rush and that dopamine hit of doing that. um, there is a beauty in delaying satisfaction, and about understanding, the difference of it. My wife comments about how when she went through the Roman Catholic catechism, it was very fast for her, and she was baptized and chrismated as a Catholic very, very fast. And she's reflected on, like, oh, it's going to be a while, and I'm okay with it taking however long it takes. I hope that I'm here long enough to become a catechumen, and to become chrismated and baptized in the church, and to have that Trinitarian baptism. But it takes a while in stages. I'll link it. Orthodox Christianity 101 has a very long, thorough article about why is it that way. And I'll make sure I add that link as well. But it's just it's very, very empowering. I came across Orthodox Ethos does a couple documentaries. I want to say it's them. They had one on Father or Saint Joseph the Hesychist, who's very profound. Who basically, his ascetic approach and hesychist approach. Let me get the word for what hesychist means. I want to get this right. Um, if I could spell it. Yeah, join Orthodox, learn different religions, or languages. Excuse me. Soothing or calming approach. and typically are practitioners of contemplative monastic tradition that seeks divine stillness through mediation and prayer, particularly the Jesus prayer, which is Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Or if you need it short, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. Or if you are in a time crunch, Lord,
Yeah, Lord of
um,
mercy.
Lord of mercy.
Kyrie is something if you want to get fancy with your Greek and
Yeah. And I actually, for a personal reason, my priest didn't have any issues with me doing it this way. Let me find it. I actually got the Orthodox prayers, just kind of, or the Jesus prayer in different languages. I have it in Portuguese, Senhor Jesucristo, Filho de Deus, tem piedade de mim, pecador. And I'm trying to learn Portuguese, and then I have Syrian, I have the Greek, Kyrie Isu Christo Haitius Ilison Meton Hamraton, and Gospodzi Elisu Christo Sin Bohoji Pumuli Aminia Gershnogo. Yeah, pardon my pronunciation, but I should be learning Portuguese over Greek and Russian, but in Syrian. But it's just it really helps having that prayer roll, and that's something that the one of the first real conversations after how I met my priest, because I got to the hospital in September. I ended up having a reinfection, and I was in the hospital. I knew I was going to have surgery, and I was like, previously I had the Orthodox priest from my parish in Japan visit me in the hospital, because he was actually the chaplain that was assigned to the Navy hospital there, which was really great. Which is I really wish I could have him on the podcast to talk about what it's like to be a chaplain and a priest, because it's like he has military duties he has to fulfill, and then he also has priestly duties he has to fill. And I don't want to get into a tangent on that, but he my priest came to the hospital, and we had a little discussion. He was excited to come talk to me, and then he was able to give me a blessing, and I had the surgery, and then able to go, and then finally able to attend. And they had last year, it was like the end of summer bash the church had. We went to a lake and had a really good barbecue, and I was able to ask. And one of the first questions I asked him, I said, I've really gotten into praying, and I want to have consistency, but there's these prayer rules that are taking me 40 minutes a day. That's 80 minutes of my day that I'm spending in prayer, and some days I'm too tired to finish it, and I feel guilty. And he said, whoa, 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 whoa. What I want you to do is use the Orthodox Study Bible, flip to the back, and use the daily prayers. And then they ended up getting some prayer booklets from the I'll actually go grab it real fast if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem.
It's they actually got these little red pocket books in, and oh,
Oh, I
the
have.
filter, yeah.
Yeah, I have that same one. Yeah, that's very convenient.
And it just that's and as you can see, it's kind of gross. I'll end up having to get it, but it's you could see on the edge that it's very well used. It gets used every day, and that's just the prayer roll. And it's simple. And then I have it to where if there's days I feel like I need to add more prayers or have my own impromptu prayers, I can do that. It just provides a structure,
Yeah,
and that's been profoundly helpful um, in my journey. And it gives me something to look forward to in the day when I wake up. For when I wake up, one of the first things I need to do is rinse my mouth out so I'm not dry, so I can go say my prayers. And I'm around 5 to 7 minutes in prayer every day. That's the minimum. And eventually I feel like I'll need something a little bit more not stringent, but something a little bit more robust if that's what my priest feels, and I'm okay with that. I'm going to follow what his dictates say so that I can be molded into the Christian Orthodox thought and have these practices not become something that I imitate, but that I permeate, and it becomes a part of me, not a not a t-shirt I put on and like, oh, look at me, I'm Orthodox.
Yeah.
um and I feel like so many people are into identity. I've talked about this for years, go through all my episodes, and I think we even talked about that previously on our podcast. It was split to two episodes before, but people just want an identity, and in Orthodoxy you have to earn it.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's a oh gosh, it's a constant process of growth. I feel like myself included, we sometimes get in a rush to become saints overnight. And um I gosh, even not just with praying more often, reading more often, I regularly like get irritated with myself about I struggle to do my full morning prayers most days. Um Gosh, I meant to come home and do the rest of them this morning earlier, but we were in a rush to get to a customers, and gosh, morning prayers are tough. I can almost always do my evening prayers all the way through, but that's just habits that grow, and there's a lot of things with me that um I'll beat myself up sometimes on sinful habits that I still fall to now and then, as we all do. But it's yeah, you have to look at it. It's like, okay, I'm only overcoming stuff like this by the grace of God, and you get a little bit of it, and there's progress. I feel like if I don't notice that I'm not doing this as often as I did a year ago, and that's continuing down that direction. Yeah, I feel like there's some you should be okay to notice that a little bit because it helps give you hope to keep persisting and keep pushing on and making this a less frequent thing until you just but there's a lot of things that just you kind of slowly change. I know last time we talked I was still very much like and I still like a little bit of like the horror film genre, but I've gave up a lot of it. And it's just because, as I'm becoming an Orthodox Christian, I don't feel like watching a movie that's straight up nihilistic smut, which unfortunately a lot of horror films are becoming these days. It just doesn't feel comfortable anymore. It feels like I'm just going to, it just doesn't fit in with what I'm doing and it feels out of place. I feel like I don't know if we ever talked much about my deep fascination with the horror film genre that I used to have, but I would go like make it a yearly practice where me and my brother would dress up as slasher film villains and go out trick-or-treating and scare people and stuff. And I did it again this past year, but after I did that, I'm like, I'm a catechumen of the Orthodox Church now. I was at this point, I was still a catechumen, and I was like going out as Art the Clown from Terrifier and like messing with people on Halloween and still was watching stuff like that. And then afterward I was like, that did not feel right at all. I kind of had this like realization and I was still trying to hold on to a lot of these interests I had, but it just felt so contrary to me all of a sudden. Like I just couldn't enjoy it anymore. And it was not like it wasn't me being rude, like it's just it was like I wasn't pointing a finger at somebody else and going like you shouldn't do that or that. Like it was a self-evaluation thing. And that's the thing, like this faith, it genuinely changes you, and I wasn't getting that elsewhere. Like I was just show up on Sunday and listen. That's about it. And you genuinely without anybody preaching down on me, the stuff just changes, stuff that doesn't fit in with this, I just start losing interest in, and it's a process. It'll go on for the rest of your life. Um, and like, like I still like a little bit of horror movies. I like a film that'll give me like a creepy campfire story vibe or something like that. Me and my friends, we watch like some like found footage horror film or something sometimes, but there's, a lot of the stuff that was really like smut, just perverse violence and for the sake of that, I couldn't watch anymore. And it's wild how these things just naturally change. There's so many. I've loved slam death metal since high school, but I probably only listened to about 10% of the bands I used to listen to because um I just can't listen to music that's about total like depravity and horrible things like anymore because whether I can understand the lyrics or not, that energy is still there. Like I'll listen to, as rare as these bands are, I'll find like a Christian slam death metal band and listen to it, and it feels better to listen to than um and it's probably still not the most edifying genre of music, who knows, but there's a lot of things that are finally just weeding themselves out since I've gone down this route into the Orthodox Church. And that wasn't happening before. I was just remaining the same person I was for years. And that's one of the big things that really sells me on Orthodoxy is that, like you had said, you start learning to pray more, that it really just actually just impacts every area of your life and continues to do so more and more.
Um, you're talking about horror movies. For me, I want to get more into cosplaying. I've cosplayed, typically I've cosplayed more villains. But as I've done that, there's some cosplays I've wanted to do that I thought would be really good. My favorite horror film, because it came from a comic, is called 30 Days a Night in Alaska. Vampires
Yeah.
realize it's dark for 30 days and we can feast and have fun. Um, it's very demonic, and I wanted to do one of those vampires just because it's so cool. All black eyes, you contacts, suit, blood. It would be really cool. But I started feeling like it didn't feel right. So I'm like
It
changing.
just feels awkward all of a sudden. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and I think that's what it really is about. Truly, this topic of theosis. What is theosis? I'm gonna pull that up real fast. But as you as you as you said, you start to truly change, and I think that's what it's about, thinking in orthodoxy. Um, so theosis is written in Ye Are Gods in Psalm 81:82 and Second Peter 1 verse 4. We are called to be partakers in divine nature. Saint Athanasius states, "The word God assumed humanity that we might become God." Saint Marcius wrote that Christians who struggle and conquer are kings and lords and gods. Countless others from the fathers of the East and West have taught this doctrine. So when ignorant Christians shock is often most common reaction. When we hear of becoming God's first idea is something akin to what Mormonism, and that there are countless gods and demigods who rule part of the universe. For well-intended ignorant Christian, this sounds as if Orthodoxy is attempting to replace the one true God for the new age in person. And the process of sonship, theosis, is a gift of God's grace. It requires effort on our part, and becoming a man would be like him is becoming a slug in order to teach other slugs to be more human. But God in his divine love did that for us. We are called to transform into God's likeness, which can only be achieved by becoming as much like God as possible in this life. The reason that Christianity has so many rules or commandments is the psalmist understood it, is that in the Psalms we see deep love for God's commandments, statutes, judgments, and laws, all of which are synonyms for the way God has given us to live. All these the psalmist pursues with a whole heart, even stating that they enlarge his heart. Verse 32. Um, the psalmist understood what many people misunderstood. God does not want us to follow arbitrary rules. He's not trying to get us to ruin our lives by taking away our fun. He's laying out the path of salvation, saying, "You are spiritual slugs covered in icky, gooey sin. I've laid out a path of divinity for you, becoming a man myself, so that you can become like me and be united unto me. You cannot do everything you're content to do as a slug. However, if you follow the ways I've shown you, you'll be slowly transformed from slugship to sonship." This is from Orthodox Road by Father Jeremy. Second time I've quoted him. Uh, oh, and he has his email, so I'm definitely totally not going to send him an email to invite him on here if he has time. But the theosis is like, it's not saying that we will become God because there's only one God. and that's where
Yeah.
Mormonism gets it wrong. And which is funny is for years when I was using as a missionary, we have there was a booklet that you use that would teach the lessons and how to teach to investigators, how to answer questions, and how to get them to join. And there was a quote from Saint Athanasius that took it complete out of context. For years, I never realized that until I started researching Orthodoxy, and I came across it one day. The entire segment of what he's talking about, and I realized how grotesque and out of context that was taken. That we are not going to become gods and have our own planets and rule. Like, no. And what's saying is that we are made holy, that our will becomes His will, as Christ says, um, and through the prayer, the was it the Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Um, in that prayer itself, it's saying that we are called to a higher living. And it's funny how so many people want to excuse their sin because they ignore that part where Christ says, go and sin no more. That go sin no more is the hardest part in Second Timothy. We have the whole enduring to the end concept, that it's a continual process, that it's not a once saved, always saved. That
Yeah.
there's some really great videos about that from Orthodox Ethos. And sorry, my computer, this Teams account keeps wanting to sign in, but I've removed the account, but it keeps interrupting stuff and trying to sign me in. I'm going to sign out so it stops doing that. Yeah, sign out. Um, yeah. Okay, it won't sign me out. That's nice. Um, where's that theosis? Yeah. And as you said, these things that you previously partake in, that you had such an affinity for, dressing up as Art the clown, and terrorizing, and me wanting to cosplay, like I was cosplaying a couple DC villains, and I did a Kylo Ren cosplay who's totally a jerk in the Star Wars movie, a terrible person. Um, the only redeeming aspect of the new Star Wars movies, but that's a podcast in itself. But I think what we imitate and who we put on and who we give our time and focus to is more important. And
Yeah.
and it's so crazy how many temptations we have all around us all the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of I mean, even while I was just saying like, oh, I'm a believer in Christ, I'm all about Christ. I was having all these things like interests on the side just completely pull me away for a while. And, I'd still be a believer, but I was totally consumed by stuff like horror films or whatever other hyperfixation that I had at the time. Um, and like, this is actually genuinely, this is, this fullness of Christianity we have in Orthodoxy is genuinely engaging because beforehand, it didn't keep you engaged. You had such a shallow idea of what Christianity is. It just doesn't keep you engaged. So you go elsewhere to look for, and I was doing that for a while and now it's just like this stuff don't interest me anymore. And it just feels contrary to what I'm being called to be. And, um, it's just like, I can't do it anymore. If will I go full blown, we shouldn't celebrate Halloween at all. And I'm like, in a way, it's stuff like that. It's like you could probably use the holiday for a good purpose, but I just don't think we should celebrate death. Like we should celebrate Christ's victory over it. But like our priest was telling people, and I definitely didn't abide by this rule. But last Halloween, he was telling people in like the church chats, it's like, I mean, yeah, go out and have fun, just be like normal and reasonable. Don't dress up as like murderous slasher villains and stuff. And I was like, oops. But
Oops.
I, but like, I mean, I thought of this year, I'd probably still go out, but if I thought of going as Dale Gribble from King of the Hill, I thought that'd be kind of funny and lighthearted. But um, that's
King of
like
the
one.
King of the Hill is
Sorry.
amazing. King of the
Oh
Hill's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah, I just have to.
I cannot not like King of the Hill. It's like such a for it being in kind of like the adult audience like cartoon area, it's so tame and kind of like comforting to watch. Like really down home type of it's but yeah, I've thought about doing that and I could there's a lot of things that I feel like I could repurpose more than get completely rid of like holidays like Halloween, I feel like I could just use that as a time to celebrate victory over death rather than fueling my fascination with death. And um and it's, I've had talks with guys at church and it's like, people will think you're prude when you go all like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this, but if we're being totally honest with ourselves, holidays, like that holiday of Halloween, like that's the day that all of the very secular folks and the pagans, like they live for that day. You see it everywhere. That's like their day, and you've got Halloween decorations that are like occult symbolism, pentagrams. Like you'll go to the costume store and you'll see like these blasphemous costumes of like slutty nuns and things like that. And like it's just like, do I really want to feed this, There's a lot of things that uh, gosh, I could go. Um I no, I don't have to be right this second, but I've probably in a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes or so, I'm probably gonna have to head or to get ready to leave for Vespers. But I just wanted to give a heads up.
Oh
Doesn't
yeah,
have to
yeah.
be abrupt.
Um, I found this quote talking about from St. Augustine of Hippo, which I know some of the Eastern Orthodox Church really don't uh, uh, venerate him as quite as much as the Western Catholicism does. But he says, "Do not kill the heathens; just convert them. Do not cut their holy trees; consecrate them to Jesus Christ."
Yeah, that's and yeah, we consider him a saint. He's just I guess you could say like kind of like you said, just a lot more revered in Roman Catholicism. He's very tied in with the West, but he is a saint in the Orthodox Church. I see quotes from him all the time still.
And Halloween follows on Samhain, which is a pagan equinox. Because in paganism, astral theology and how the stars and planets align. In Emperor Louis the Pious declared in 835 that November 1st would be the consecration obligation of the Frankish Empire. Holiday became the church's one of the most important feast days of All Saints' Day, marked by masses, prayers, and rituals. Um, and alternatively, All Hallows Eve is Halloween or All Souls Day, commemoration of faithfully departed. Altogether, these days were known as Hallowed Tide, as fell the Saint All Saints Day gave way to All Souls Day. Bells were rung for the soul's purification and purgatorial fire. So I know there's a little bit of difference between the Orthodox on purgatory and that, and um, there's a whole trick or treating element, the friggin' capitalistic change of it. And I feel like in a modern sense, it's not really associated with that, but I think there's, this is from, I quoted that from Pagans and Christian Origins of Halloween by Nathaniel Perry on the medievalist.net. I'm not going to include that in there. I'll just say that that's where I came it from, so I don't get accused of plagiarism. But yeah, I think it's I think your priest uh, is on something important. We like how we imitate and what we do matters, and there should be some thought in that. And so maybe these things and cultural practices that we are doing, how can we consecrate it to God in a way that um, is wholesome? That you know consecrate their holy trees unto Christ, which is an interesting aspect. I'll have to dig into that later, but yeah, it makes you think about what we are doing that is important. It's like how many people, it's like people are like, oh, I don't have time to do this, but you spend 3 hours of your day watching Netflix before you go to bed. That's time that you could
Yeah.
be better served. There's so much time. I really do appreciate the memento mori concept of, having a checkbox of every day that you've lived to show how little days you have left. And and we don't know when it will be our last. God forbid something tragic could happen and that our life is snuffed out. And the time that we do have, we're going to be accountable for it. And so we have to be cognizant of that. And I think that's where we come back to that topic of theosis, like changing our ways. The book I do really, really, really want to read, because I was reading, or rather listening to, um, the podcast Intersection of East and West. They do a lecture service. It's a Orthodox church up in near Pennsylvania, and one of the deacons there, basically they go through Sunday school and they read different Orthodox books, and he does lectures about those books. And I was listening to some of the lecture series on this book by what's her name? I already lost it. Uh, Jean or Eugenia Constantinou. It's a Greek word. It's like her last name's Constantine, basically. Um, but her book is like it talks about everything that we should be and how we should think and how we develop that mindset and what things. And one of there in there is something very applicable to me. My background in LDS Church and apologetics is very common. Amateur theology is very prevalent in LDS faith, and I was even an amateur theologist before. I was very interested in religions, and I didn't go that route academically, but um, putting a new mind to our ourself and picking up that paradigm and to have a new worldview that is Christ centered, uh, I think is one of the most important aspects.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it's tough. I feel like, I could consciously say I probably spent most of my day thinking of Christ or something related to him, but regular prayer, that is hard. You're told to pray without ceasing, and I've not 100% grasped exactly what that means. Gosh, I really, like uh I'm not the best on any kind of spiritual advice, obviously. I've only been officially Orthodox about uh March, April, May, going on 3 months. Um, but it's a process. It's just yeah, theosis. Um,
It's not an overnight thing, and I think that's the beauty in it.
yeah. But yeah, anyway, gosh, if the time didn't go by so quickly, I'd continue to stay. I do have to get ready though for Vespers.
Okay,
I always try to about I have like an hour and a half to get there, but sometimes now and then
traffic.
the traffic up in Chattanooga, Tennessee can be horrible. So I always try to get there exceptionally early just to be safe. I'm I'm a greeter at my parish too, so if I can get there early enough to meet some visitors and square some things away, gosh, that's been kind of like a small cross to carry in and of itself because I'm an introvert. But um yeah, I usually try to get there early for that reason too. We got our some chores, plants that got to be watered, things like that. That's another thing I love about the Orthodox Church. It genuinely feels like family, and you treat your parish like it's your home. But yeah, this was great. I felt, it hit me up the other day. I was like, a lot's happened since the last time, I was on here, and last time we had like a long talk like this, because I mean, at that time you were still very much LDS, and I was going to a Baptist church. So
I know it's crazy.
yeah.
Um, I do feel bad though. I think we rambled a little bit too much. I did want to ask about Resurrected Divinity, but we could leave that for another day. But you still are doing that. You did release a new album, so it seems like your priest may have okayed that. And
Um, there's a I do have a few minutes. I I think. gosh, that's something, admittedly, I've never really talked to my priest about the music I make. Um,
Oops.
I just try to be cautious. Gosh, yeah, that's the thing. Oh man, now I feel like a bad Orthodox Christian. But um, yeah, I try with my lyrics. That's been a tough thing. There's been a lot of changes because I mean, I went from being, like Protestant or whatever, and now, the base that follows my music is seeing that I'm, doing all these things that are taboo to Protestants, and there's been some people that wanted to argue things like that. I try to just be cautious with my lyrical content, because I don't want to come forth, preaching heresies with my lyrics. So a lot of my lyrics are still about personal spiritual struggles, and then there are sort of like I've written a couple of songs of like uh sort of like songs to like the Theotokos and things like that, and songs about saints that are pretty much, like can't go wrong with the lyrics. Like I'm just basically talking about what is actually written down that happened and things like that. Um gosh, I might need to start talking to him about that. It's like he knows my music taste, and he's not like the type of priest to say you can't be into that. And then if you're worth, like there's some I wouldn't doubt that there's some super ultra traditional priests that are like, extreme metal is not spiritually edifying. You should avoid it. And um, but yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to talk about. Maybe if you have a time, a little Ask a Boona session. Hey, I got a question. Maybe sidebar later.
yeah, gosh,
Uh, I know for me, one of the songs I was going to release last year, it just everything happened, but I think it happened for right reason. But I'm having to remove. Well, I'm changing some of the lyrics, and I'm removing an audio sample that was an LDS audio sample. I'm removing it, and I'm trying to locate one that fits the same nature and tune of the song. But that's what I hope to work on as well. But yeah, brother, this has been great. I do enjoy your new stuff. I hope your priest gives a blessing on it, um,
yeah.
or he can
I
vet your lyrics before. Hey, what do you think about this? So like, uh,
yeah.
kind of do that. So
I need to Yeah, maybe I need to just have a little conversation with him, or we're actually in the process. Um, I'm not in a super rush. I've got a couple minutes I could spare, but there has been the fourth album I've been working on, which is practically a gigantic double album at this point because there's so much. I was already well into the process when I started attending an Orthodox church, so there were so many lyrics I rewrote, and I'm still, constantly revising lyrics. That's just how I am. When I'm working on an album, there's constant revision. It's but like yeah, I have told myself like, be cautious with the lyrics, try not to represent orthodoxy in a bad way. Um but yeah, I think, gosh, now that you mention it, because I've thought about this, and then I've thought, oh man, do I really, should I hit him up about that, or is he just gonna go like, what our priest is he's Father Seth is super laid back, but I might just ask him about that maybe tonight, and see what he thinks. Like he's not opposed to me, liking that kind of music, being involved with it. He's got friends that are like one of his good friends I met is like a big metalhead and things like that. And um, but yeah, that's a good point because I mean I've thought the same thing, and now that you mention it, I might hit him up and just see what he thinks.
well, go with God, be courageous, my friend. I think you'll get the okay. He seems like a really good father to have, and this has been great, brother. I hope you have a safe drive. Enjoy Vespers. Hopefully, you have some good times. Let's. I like having you on. I know your episode was kind of more liked and watched others. I need to be better. Post it to YouTube. I'll make sure I tag you and stuff. And uh, it'll be after I have to do a bunch of edits. It'll probably take me about a week or so to get this out. So
Oh, you're good.
uh,
No rush. I know, like, oh
uh,
man,
I'll
me and
probably
my
work on it.
rambling.
I'll work on it tomorrow, and then um, do have some other stuff coming up. But yeah, it's been great. Um, I may edit and make things a little bit better, kind of splice some stuff up to
It, feel
make a
free to crop
transition.
stuff out because
Yeah,
I know how I like go. Me and my rabbit trails. It's a terrible
yeah,
habit.
yeah. Say we have a similar thought process. So, but yeah, it's been great, brother. I really appreciate it. Oh, I forgot. Is it Tikhon or Tycon? How do you
It's Tikhon. I
Tikhon?
wouldn't doubt that there's multiple ways to pronounce it, but it's I think I've heard Tikhon like just before, but
Yeah,
what I've heard mostly is just it's Tikhon.
but well, I appreciate it, sir. You have a wonderful day. God
Uh,
bless.
you as well.
Ciao.
Appreciate it.